Ready to go?
We're ready to go.
All right. Welcome, everybody. Hello, hello, hello. If possible, and you can click your video on just so I can get a quick glimpse who you are and what you look like and all kind of good things. Mr. Ayer, good to see you. Anybody else? Hi, Ms. Rodriguez. Mr. Curran. All right.
Yeah, it's Curran. You said it correctly the first time.
Very good. Manraj.
It's a Manraj.
Minraj. Nice to meet you. Our pleasure. Thank you for being here. And hi, Ethan. Nice to meet you too. Okay, well, let's get going. My name is Dio Salcido. I am a sports psychology consultant. I have been practicing sports psychology consultant for the last 29 years. Next year will mark my 30th anniversary. Pretty happy about that. I started working with college athletes at UC Riverside and progressed to professional athletes. Do we have any baseball fans in the house? Any Dodger fans? Unfortunately, if you're a Dodger fan, we didn't get to the final goal. But we do have Joe Kelly is one of our UCR athletes with the Dodgers. And I was trying to get him to pop in, we'll see. But anyway, so I work with athletes, progress to professional athletes. And now I work with performing artists, doctors, pilots, dentists, business professionals, educators, and so on. And so what I'd like to do today is I'd like to share what I've learned in 29 years of working what I refer to as elite performers. There's 3 or 4 things that I want to share in our time frame here today. And hopefully there'll be some of these things I'm pretty sure you can apply to esports. At any time you have a question, just stop me, wave your hand, and I'll be glad to answer your question or clarify something that I talked about. Okay. So what I want to talk about today are routines. What I know in working with elite performers is that all elite performers have routines. They have pre-performance routines. They have routines during a performance that helps them to deal with stress and anxiety, fear, failure, being out of sync, out of control, out of rhythm. They also have post routines. So after routines are always seeking constructive and/or critical feedback. So what I want to talk about today are routines. I learned my craft from Gary Mack, who was the sports psychologist with the Seattle Mariners and the Phoenix Suns. And I also mentored with Ken Ravizza, who was the sports psychology consultant with the Dodgers, the Angels, the Cubs, many professional teams. And one of the first questions they ever asked me, which, by the way, when I met them, it was as a professional musician. I toured for 10 years straight, 17 years total, with a 10-time Grammy Award winner, George Benson. And so I invited Gary Mack to come to a show because I just wanted to meet him, because I'd heard about this new field called sports psychology. And so I contacted a former high school classmate that was playing for the Seattle Mariners at the time, Alvin Davis, and asked him if I could meet the team sports psychologist, and that happened to be Gary Mack. So he gave me his number. I called him, and 3 weeks later, we were touring in Arizona where Gary Mack lived. So I came to the show with Ken Ravizza, and the first question they ever asked me was, "Hey, Dio, what is it you do to get yourself ready to perform?" All right, what is it you do to get yourself ready to perform? And my response was, I don't really know what you're talking about, right? I'm a musician. We don't think that way. Because again, they were using sports psychology jargon, which I wasn't familiar with. So I said, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't really have I don't think that way. I don't have any sort of routine. And they said, well, look, would you just for us, would you just write down some notes, right? Sort of like, make a journal of sorts for a couple of weeks and jot down what it is that you do before performance. Okay, I said, all right, I'll do it. But I'm telling you, I don't do anything. In music, here's what we do, right? We get out on stage and we go 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we hit it, and we're off and running. All right. So anyway, I did it 2 weeks later. Sure enough, right? Sure enough, I put my my left dress sock on first, then my right sock, then my dress pants, right, and then oh, Brian, wow, look at that, right? Dr. Revisa, good man, rest in peace, right? So anyway, so there was a sequence of things that I did: left sock, right sock, dress slacks. Then I would go out and get my my big drumsticks. I'm a percussionist, right? I play congas and timbales. So I went out and got my big sticks. That's sort of the equivalent to a baseball player putting the donut on a bat, making the bat heavier. So when you take it off, the bat feels lighter. So I'd go get my sticks. I'd warm up. Then I'd stretch a little bit. And then I might read a little scripture. And then I would close my eyes and just think about performing. And long story short, I had a pre-performance routine. And so what I've learned in the 29 years since is that and I'm not necessarily saying I'm in this category, I'm just saying that definitely elite performers have pre-performance routines. And the reason they have pre-performance routines is because when you have a routine, it's what you rely on, what you resort to when you're out of sync, out of control, out of rhythm, right? Whatever you put in that's in your routine, that's what you resort to. That's what you rely on, right? Because it's familiar, right? It makes you feel comfortable, right? Performers love to feel comfortable. They love to be in control, and it builds confidence. So the 3 C's, that's why you have routines. So the question is, what should you put in those routines? Well, here's what I know about the people who are the best at what they do, right? So number one, most of us, if you've ever played a sport, you show up and you wait for your coach to gather you up and say, all right, everybody up, everybody up. All right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to stretch for 10 minutes, then we're going to go do some offensive drills and defensive drills and so forth. And like good little soldiers, we do what we're told, right? And that's not a negative by any means, right? That's just how it works, right? Those who are really good at what they do, that's not the way they work, right? They're not reactive. Most of us are reactive. We wait to be told what to do, right? That's not how they think. They're not reactive, they're proactive. Right? So they're not waiting to be told what to do before they even get to the performance arena, wherever it is. They're already thinking ahead of what it is that they could get better at, right? And so after 29 years of doing this, I just know that the people who are the best at what they do, this is what they do better than the rest of us, right? They just wake up and straight out of the womb, they're already asking themselves the question every single day, man, what's the one thing I can do to get just a little bit better today? That's the one thing they do that most of us don't do. They do it all the time, right? They ask themselves the question, what's the one thing I can do to get just a little bit better today? And when you can answer that question, that becomes the goal, right? Most of us have talked about goal setting, right? You've heard it from coaches and teachers and just a lot of people about goal setting, daily, weekly, 3 months, 6 months, whatever. What I've learned is that they simply do it daily, every day, every week, every month. They just do it all the time, right? And so when you do that, what you're doing is you're assuming responsibility for what's going to happen that day. We call that responsibility psychology, right? You're assuming responsibility when you make that choice. When you ask the question and you get the goal, what you're doing is you're now assuming responsibility for what it is that you're going to get better at today. Right? So that's a big difference, right? So they're proactive, not reactive. So you have to be a goal setter. And here's the deal. I've learned that it doesn't have to be a different goal every day. It can be the same goal. So for example, if I asked you, what's the goal today? Brian, just by wave of your hand, if I asked you, is there one thing that you can get better at today? Could you answer that question, yes or no? Is all I want to know.
Yes, of course.
Okay. All right, good. Right. Now, if you can't answer that question, because there are some people who can't, right? Think of some categories of areas that you could get better at. So let's say, Brian, let me go to you again, and you just nod your head or yes or no, right? Is there something technical or fundamental that you could work on today to get just a little bit better, whatever your performance area is, right? Yes. Okay. Is there something mental? Or is there some mental skill that you could get better at today? Maybe, right? Is there something emotional, right? Is there something, maybe some dealing with adversity? You know, that's a challenge. Could you get better at dealing with adversity, constructive and or critical feedback from a supervisor, a coach, you know, somebody who oversees your performance? Could you get better in that area? I don't know if you're a believer, a strong faith, religious, what have you. Is there something in that category, spiritual, that you could get better at? It could be a goal, right? So for example, you know, it is a good goal today for you to be an encourager, an uplifter, a motivator for somebody who needs that. Because we've been around people who are not that. We've been around people who are the opposite of that, who could use somebody like you to be that, right? So that's a good goal to have. So if you can't answer the question, man, what's the one thing I can work on to get just a little bit better today? It could be fundamental, technical. It could be mental, it could be emotional, it could be spiritual, right? Those are just categories that I've come up with over the years, okay? All right, so you gotta be a goal setter. All right, number two. A lot of us have set goals. Right now, anybody, have you ever set a goal and seen yourself successfully completing that goal? And by the way, feel free to put it in the chat. Right? Have you ever had a goal and seen yourself successfully performing that goal, achieving that goal? Right? Yes or no? You can put it in the chat, you can nod your head, right? Most of us have, okay? Emma says yes, right? Dean, yep, okay. In sports psychology, Brian, I'm gonna put you on the spot since you and Ken Revisa, we're partners, right? What do we call that in sports psychology, right? When you see yourself successfully performing some tasks, that's what?
Like visionary, like putting yourself, not seeing yourself as third person. If you see yourself third person, not first person. I still remember from some of those classes and actually doing this with being on a couple different basketball teams. So as far as seeing yourself do that, in the first person.
I think you got it right at the beginning. You said vision, and I see Dean, you put it in there, but right, visualization, right, visualizing, right, that's what we call it, right? Seeing yourself successfully perform whatever the goal or the task is, you're visualizing it, you're seeing it, right? And so in sports psychology, that's one of the things that we emphasize, because the science says that your brain cannot distinguish between what's real versus what you imagine. It can't tell the difference. Right? It cannot tell the difference, which is why, I'll pick on Dean there. Dean, I know you're a big, strong, courageous young lad, but I know that you have probably waken up, in the middle of the night and had a nightmare sometime in your lifetime. Am I correct, Dean? Right? You've had a scary nightmare. You wake up and you're going, man. And one of the top three is what? Falling. Anybody ever had the experience of falling, right? I think we all have, right? So you wake up and you sit up and you're going, man, what was it? Was I falling? I mean, right? Or was somebody really stabbing me and pulling my heart out and watching it beat as I slowly drift away, right? So it wasn't real, but the brain can't distinguish between what's real versus imagined. So you just had that experience. You can't tell the difference. You just had that experience. So what does that mean in terms of performance, right? What that means is that any mental scenario you create, right, the brain will treat as if it were actually happening, which means you can create as many positive, successful experiences as you choose to imagine. That makes sense, right? You get to choose how many positive, successful experiences you want, right? It's up to you, right? Now, what we want is we want to have as many positive, successful experiences because it makes you feel good about yourself, right? It makes you feel positive about yourself. It builds confidence when you have a lot of positive experience. And I'm talking about real experiences. I'm not talking about visualizing, not yet. I'm talking about when you have positive, successful experience in real life, it makes you feel better about yourself, and eventually it builds confidence, right? Okay. All right. So if the brain can't distinguish between what's real versus imagined, then every time that you imagine a positive, successful experience, right, the brain treats it as if you just had another positive, successful experience, another positive, successful rep, right? You just had another rep, another repetition of something that was positive, right? And so psychologically, you reap the same benefits. That's the power of visualization, right? And you're right. Dean, I see your comment. It helps deal with stress and calm, right? In the moment of performance, you're exactly right, right? And so the beauty of visualization is you can create situations before they happen, right? So let's say you've got a performance coming up. You can approximate reality. You can never make it as real, right? But you can imagine in advance all the different things that could go wrong. Man, I woke up this morning and I had food poisoning. I still got to perform. I woke up, I got a headache. I woke up and man, whatever, right? It's freezing outside and I got to go perform, right? It wasn't supposed to snow today, but now I got to go perform. So you can anticipate and imagine all those possible scenarios before they happen and see yourself successfully performing in that moment through the power of visualization. Okay, so you have to be a goal setter, number one. And you have to ask yourself the question, man, what's the one thing I can do today to get just a little bit better? Number two, right, you have to visualize, right? And if you can, right, it's the movie of the week, starring you. You try to get as many details as possible. What does it look like, feel like, smell like, sound like, taste like? What's happening when you're having the best day ever, right? You want to get details. Michael Jordan once said that that's the goal, to get as many of the senses involved. But he said sometimes all you get is what it felt like. And that's good enough. If you remember what it felt like, that's good enough, right? All right, so you got to be a goal setter, you got to visualize. We want as many positive, successful experiences as you can possibly accumulate because it helps you feel better about yourself, comfort, confidence, and so forth, okay? So in our mental warehouse, which is this, we want to store as many positive experiences as we possibly can, okay? Now, how many of you have ever had a day where you had, let me just throw out numbers. You had 4 positive experiences, you're feeling pretty good about yourself, and then you had that one experience that just didn't go right, right? We'll call it a negative experience, right? Just to make it, so you get it. So you had 4 positives today, but dang, you had that one experience, which is, man, I just blew that one. Okay, so now you go home, all right? Now, tell me what you think about. You go home and think about the 4 positive things that you did or the one negative thing that you did. Emma, you're going, right? You think about the negative, right? And here's what you do. You replay the negative over and over and over and over. Now think about what I just said, right? The brain can't distinguish between what's real versus imagined. So anything that you recreate, right, and replay, you just had that experience because the brain can't tell the difference, right? So now what you're doing is you're creating a warehouse full of negatives, way more than positives. Interesting, athletes do this all the time, right? Baseball player goes 4 for 5, 2 triples, 2 home runs, but struck out with the game-winning guy on third base, right? He goes home and goes, man, doesn't think about the 2 home runs of 2. He thinks about striking out, right? And so you just replay it over and over and over. The brain can't tell the difference. So all you're doing is you're just storing more negative experiences in your mental warehouse. And remember what I said, what you put in there, that's what the brain is going to recall. That's what you're going to revert to when you're out of sync, out of control, out of rhythm, when you're stressed and anxious. That's what the brain is going to go look for. It's going to recall what you put in there the most. And so if you keep putting in the negative, that's what it's going to recall. All right, so what do we do when we have negative thoughts or thinking, negative experiences, all right? So anybody that can chime in here in the chat or unmute yourself, all right? So in sports psych, we say that negative thinking is like digging a hole, right? And in this case, digging a hole is a negative thing. It's a bad thing. We do not want to be digging holes, okay? Negative thinking is like digging holes, okay? All right. What's the first thing you should do when you find yourself digging a hole? What do you got, Brian? I saw you say something, but I didn't hear you. Stop digging. Correct. Now, even simpler, stop. Right? Now, everybody learns different. Everybody's different kind of learner, right? So you either say stop, see stop, or scribble stop, right? Are you a visual learner, an audio learner, kinesthetic learner? Everybody learns different. So if you need to see it, make a sign, right? If you need to write it on your wrist, right? Or just say it, right? Say it, either one, but stop. All right, anybody. Once you stop, what are you going to replace the negative with? Right? Emma, I saw you say something. What did you say? Put it in the chat if you want, or you can say it.
Oh, I was gonna say replace it with a positive thought.
Thank you. That's beautiful. All right, so far so good. Now, I've done this with athletes for 30 years, and I say, hey, what's your go-to word? What's your go-to slogan, quote, scripture, whatever, positive self-affirmation, whatever it is you want to call it, right? What is it? And do you use it regularly? And the answer for most is nothing. Now, here's why you need to have something positive. Because if you don't have a positive to combat the negative, then your negative just keeps popping up. The negative just keeps going. Okay, now here's the science. The brain says that you cannot think of two things at the same time. You can do multiple things at the same time, but you cannot think of two things at the same time. Anybody want to try it? You guys look like you're pretty intelligent, right? Let's try it just for laughs. Okay, so look at me. If you got your video on, just look at me real quick. Okay, right. When I say go, right, I want you to think of these two things at the same time. Okay, you ready? You up for it? Ready? Okay. I want you to think of good and bad at the same time. Ready? Go. Okay, stop. All right. Here's what I think you can do. You could go, okay, good, bad, good, bad, good, bad, good, bad, good, bad. You can almost get it, right? Good, bad, but you can't. The science says you can't. You could do multiple things. You do that when you drive all the time. We do multiple things. Some things we shouldn't be doing, right? Like looking at your phone, whatever, right? Okay. Science says you can't think of two things at the same time, which is the reason why you should have a positive, something short, something quick, right? Let's say I'm a champion, all right? So here's how it goes, right? You're flailing, you're just failing. It's not going right. The negative keeps popping up and you go, man, I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this, right? So it's a loop that you have to practice. So it should go like this. Oh my God, I can't do this. Stop. I'm a champion. Oh my God, I can't do this. Stop. I'm a champion. Oh my God, stop. I can't do this. I'm a champion, right? Because at the moment that you say, I'm a champion, you can't possibly be thinking, oh my God, I can't do this. Now, this is very challenging to get to the point where you automatically, as soon as the negative starts creeping in, you think, got this, I'm a champion, right? But you have to practice it. Malcolm Gladwell said we have to do things 10,000 hours to achieve excellence, blah, blah, blah. I'm not a 10,000 hour guy. I'm a 10,000 rep guy. I think you have to do it 10,000 times, right? That's a lot of times, right? Because these have to become new habits, right? You have to change the habits. So you have to practice this 10,000 times until it becomes second nature, until it becomes a new habit. That makes sense, right? So you have to practice that loop. Oh my God, I can't do this. Stop, I'm a champion. Oh my God, I can't do this. Stop, I'm a champion. Until I'm a champion pops up as soon as you start thinking of the negative. That makes sense? You with me so far? Right? So you have to be a goal setter. You have to visualize, and visualize positives, but when the negatives pop up, right, you have to stop and replace it with the positive, because you can't think of two things at the same time. Okay, final concept. Usually when you're stressed or anxious, out of sync, out of control, not having a good day, right, there's one, two things that could happen, maybe more, right? One of them is that whatever you're doing, here's what usually happens. So take a look at me real quick. Okay, so athletes do this, but you could probably do it in your job, where you're just working and you don't even realize, and you go, right? What I just do, I'm holding my breath. That's what I'm doing, right? In some sports, you can hold your breath when you get stressed. When you get tense, you go, right? Okay. The other thing that can happen is when you get really stressed or anxious, right? This is what happens. That speeds up, then that speeds up, and then that speeds up. That speeds up, and that speeds up, and then that speeds up, right? So your breathing speeds up. Okay, so the last principle is that you have to learn how to be in control of your breathing to be in control of your performance, right? We stress this a lot because it's one strategy that you can use that's free, number one, and you can practice it every second, every minute, every hour, every day, week, month, on your own, anytime. And again, it's free. So you can work on it anytime you want. And by the way, goal setting, visualizing, eliminating or reducing negative thoughts and thinking, and controlling your breathing are all learned skills. They're all learned skills that you have to practice. How many times? 10,000 times to get really good at it, right? So you have to learn how to be in control of your breathing. So this is what I want you to think about, right, when you're working on your breathing. Number one, think about the time of day that's your most relaxed state of breathing. Most people will say that it's right when they're going to bed. Some people say as soon as I get up. Okay, whatever that is, practice visualizing what that sounds like and what it feels like, because everybody's breathing pattern is unique. It's different. Some people inhale deeply and exhale very shortly. Some people it's short and quick. Everybody, it's different. So listen to the sound and the rhythm of your breathing. The pattern of your breathing is unique, right? So when you're most relaxed state, think of that, right? Last thing, when you're working on your breathing, has any of you ever gotten some flowers from somebody? Yeah, Emma, Brian, maybe? Okay. Now, when you get the flowers, you know, you get the, let's say you get a dozen roses, right? Do you do this when you get them? I mean, do you snort it when you breathe the flowers? No. All right. So Brian and Emma, I can see you. Show me, right? Show me when you inhale, what it looks like and feels like when you get the flowers. Okay, ready, go. Thank you very much, right? It's nice and slow, right? It's controlled. That does smell good. Thank you very much. I love you. You're the best, right? Okay, right? So, you know, so when you think of inhaling, think flowers, right? You with me? Think flowers. All right. Now I'm gonna take you back to when you were a kid. How many of you ever got one of those little containers, in the plastic containers of bubbles? You ever get one of those and it had a little wand in it? Okay, you take the wand and you dip it in there, and if you blow too hard, what happens to the bubble? Boop, right? If you don't blow hard enough, what happens to the bubble? No bubble. Now look at me, okay? Now show me the perfect exhale to get the perfect bubble. Ready, go. Ooh. Thank you. My hair is, right? Beautiful. All right, now think flowers and bubbles. When you inhale and exhale, think flowers and bubbles. That's what I want you to remember. Flowers and bubbles. That makes sense? Flowers and bubbles. It's as simple as that. Okay, so you got to be a goal setter. You got to visualize, eliminate or stop negative thoughts and thinking, and learn how to control your breathing. Those are the 4 things that I ever work on with or share that I've learned that I share with. It doesn't matter whether it's a Joe Kelly or a 12-year-old, baseball player that I just talked to. Right? I have to adapt the verbiage, but those are the concepts that I use that I've learned in working with elite performers that they do. And they do it more frequently and they do it better than us, right? They came out of the womb better. This is my own philosophy or observation. They came out of the womb with better physical gifts, number 1. And number 2, better mental gifts, right? And so they just do things better than the rest of us. And they practice their skills longer than everybody else on the planet. They just do it more, right? That's what differentiates them from us. But these are some of the things that we can use because the goal is to get better. The goal is to get just a little bit better every day, right? The goal is progress, not perfection. The goal is to get just a little bit better every single day. And I'm convinced that if you'll just do these, right? If you'll just practice these, I have a 3-minute drill that I use with teams where before they start practice or a game or whatever the performance is, they go through this sequence. What's my goal, right? And to get the goal, I got it. Now let me visualize myself performing that goal in real time. Just little short, brief moments, whatever it is, right? Because everybody's attention span is now 1 to 2 seconds, right? So just do brief clips of experiencing something positive, right? In real time, over and over and over. Just do it a few times, right? Then you stop. Then you can listen to the breathing, right? And then I have you purposely slow down the breathing just a little bit. Listen to the breathing, slow down again, listen to the breathing, count you down from 10 to 1, 3 minutes, right? That's the pre-performance routine to help you get ready to perform. Okay. Now, some of these other things you can use during a performance. When I'm stressed and anxious and my breathing changes or the negative thoughts pop up, those are 2 things that I can use during a performance, right? So some of these are pre-performance, some of them you can use during a performance. Post-performance, that's another thing. If you got a coach, you need to constantly seek out a coach who can provide you with constructive and or critical feedback, not criticism, constructive and or critical feedback, right? Because as they say, all the masters have masters, right? So you need somebody who's better at what you do to give you constructive and or critical feedback. And you should be a seeker of it. Don't wait for it to come. You seek it out. The people who are the best at what they do, they're always just constantly, hey, can I get some feedback? Can I get some feedback? And most people don't do that because it's uncomfortable. Right? It's very uncomfortable and nobody wants to be in that position, right? But you have to be a seeker of it. Okay, so that in a nutshell is what I've learned in working with elite performers and the routines that they use to achieve excellence. And so you can adapt, or what I want to say, adapt the verbiage to fit the audience. And sometimes that's challenging for me even. I generally don't work with anyone less than a high schooler because I'm not that good at talking to the 10-year-old. And here's the thing, that more and more parents are calling guys like me to work with their kids younger and younger and younger. And personally, I'm not in favor of it. I think that as a parent, that you should instill in your child the joy of participating in whatever it is and not focusing on the outcome. Right? I need to score points in my club team, my travel ball, because my coach said that I'm going to get X number of touches and other people are going to see me and I'm going to get a scholarship to a Division I school and I'm going to be a big league player. That's the promise. And we know that that's less than 2-3% of the population ever achieves that. Okay. All right. So any thoughts, questions, observations? Maybe you fill me in on how you think it might work with esports or teams that you're working with, your own personal performance, or something not related to esports, your daily life. Because listen, we all are performers in the game of life, right? We all have to perform at work. Miss Miller, you're performing right now. I'm performing. You as an audience, you're performing. Your daily job, you have to perform. It doesn't matter. Performance is performance, right? We all deal with stress and anxiety, fear, failure, loss of energy, enthusiasm, discipline, commitment, intensity, passion. We all deal with the same variables, no matter what the performance arena is. We all do. And these things you can use anywhere, doesn't matter where you are, okay? Any thoughts, observations, comments, ways that you think that it could help the esport participant, the esport coach, the team? What do you got? Teach me something.
I'll go first. I kind of was told by my therapist about the whole breathing technique because when I play games, I'm an avid gamer, but I recently started playing Valorant. I've never played one before, and I found myself, especially during clutch situations where like it's all on me, where I would literally stop breathing and hold my breath. And I thought it was funny that you brought that up because I'm literally just like holding my breath, and once I'm done with the round or whatever, I just let it all out. And that's kind of like counterintuitive because like you said, you hold your breath and you're just like storing all that stress, and I can physically feel the adrenaline leaving my body. Yeah. Where I'm shaking and sweating the next round in, and my heart is pounding. I'm like, oh my God, I wasn't breathing. That's not helping. But also I happen to be a psychology major at Cal State Bakersfield, and it's like all of this is literally what we've been taught in class.
Yeah, sure.
So it's very like positive psychology, how your mind and your body connect, and they're just like in a fluid cycle all together. And I think it's really important, even outside of esports. Like I work at a Title I school, so a lot of the students here, you know, they have, I would say, pent up rage, and they don't know how to channel that effectively. And so to remind them, hey, you know, you may be angry in this situation right now. What do we do in the classroom when you're upset at a video game? Stop, breathe, let it out. Think of other solutions besides punching so-and-so in the face. And that actually does tend to help.
Well, here's what I know to be true.
Mm-hmm.
The reason that most of us aren't very good at some of these things, because a lot of us have heard these things, right?
Yeah.
The reason we're not good at them is because none of us really practice them.
Mm-hmm.
It's that simple. These are things we've heard or we know to be true that can be effective, but I know that I started 1994, and I thought 30% of the population I believe are the best at what they do.
Yeah.
Right? The best. Now I'm down to 1% or less. That's what I've learned. 1% or less. The rest just aren't willing to put in the time, the energy to practice these things, because again, they're learned skills. There's nothing magical or mystical about them, right? But nobody practices these to the extent that they become automatic, because you have to practice these things in performance so that they become automatic. Practice them in your practice session so that they become automatic in the performance, right? You prepare and train, and then you trust and believe. But the only way you get to the trust and believe is by practicing in your practice session.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Right. Now, you can't always get in the reps in a physical practice session, but you can visualize it. That's where the visualization comes in, where you can now get in as many positive reps as you want to practice. But the bottom line is, if you want to be good at what you do, you can either choose to be one of two: the best you can be, or the best. And the best is 1% or less category, in my opinion. It's just my number. But even if you want to be the best you can be, you have to practice way more than I probably think you're practicing. I don't know that to be true.
Without a doubt.
Right. So it comes down to that, right? Do you want to put in the time or energy to get better at it? And you just put up your little reminders, by wherever you are, you put up your little cues, right? You have to have a cue that reminds you of the routine you've been practicing. For me, it was breathe and focus. I had stickers that I put up that reminded me, I need to practice, right? Being in control of my performance, right? As a percussionist, right? And I had to visualize myself taking a solo, right? And seeing it being successful. And so I had positive breathe and focus stickers on my cymbals, my drums, all my stuff. And for 2 hours during a concert, I could look over and see breathe and focus, breathe and focus, breathe and focus, breathe and focus. And I did that for a couple of years. It took me a long time because I wasn't always out on the road steady. I'm home for 2 weeks, be out for a week. But that's how long it took me of just doing it until it became automatic.
Yeah, I've also noticed too, you mentioned the like negative thoughts and kind of like digging yourself in a hole. I've noticed that as well as like, you know, personally from playing just out of pure habit and love for gaming, that when I feel like I'm at my lowest performance, I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh my God, I'm playing like trash. And it gets worse and worse and worse as the night progresses. And then you start to tilt queue and it's like, all right, I just need to rage quit and get off because I'm not winning here at all.
Yes.
So the tip you gave us where, you know, stop and remind yourself to breathe in, or whatever your positive affirmation is a really good break for that.
Yeah. But again, put up some little cues, right? To remind yourself, right? Wherever you are, because it has to be a reminder for you to practice it. Right? Even if it's at work or at school all day, put it somewhere, write it somewhere. Baseball players might put it at the end of the bat, under their hat, you know, on their glove. Put it somewhere because you have to have a reminder that reminds you to practice that routine.
Yeah.
Right. So because you got to get the reps in. You got to get the reps in. Try to see if I got my information there. So if you want, you can contact me, diosalcido at Yahoo. I misspelled it there. It's diosalcido at yahoo.com or performersassist.com. Feel free to reach out. If you got some questions. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions or challenges. You know, Brian, you probably know it all, being around Ken Revisa. We were pretty good. I taught at Cal State Fullerton for 10 years. So after we met backstage, I then got off the road and I ended up teaching at Cal State Fullerton where he was. So I used to go into his class all the time.
What years were you there?
2001 to 2011. Yeah.
That's when that's when I was there. Yep.
Oh, man, that's funny. So listen, thank you very much. I appreciate you guys hopping on in. We were small but mighty today. I've learned from George Benson, 10-time Grammy Award winner, years ago, that it didn't matter if there were 3 people or 3 million. He was very good at what he did and that's why he was a 10-time Grammy Award winner. That's what I learned from him. Performance is performance. Doesn't matter if there's 3 or 3 million. You got to bring. Nobody asked if you were tired, didn't keep, whatever, right? You did or you didn't, right? You win or you lose, right? So thank you very much. I appreciate it. And feel free to reach out and I'll be more than happy to respond, right? Thank you guys. Appreciate it. Thank you, Ms. Miller.
Thank you. Thank you for a wonderful session.